Hello, my friends. Happy hump day. It's Wednesday. My name is Natasha. I am so excited to be here with you today. I cannot wait because I am like super close to like finalizing my name. I never got to finish this story. So I ended up like having this whole idea like, okay, so I was talking a little bit yesterday about the challenges I faced having a super unique name and wanting to be ultra basic, and that just wasn't my lot in life. And so when it came time to name my kids, only one of the 4 kids did I know their name before they were born. Like the rest of them, literally their immunization records show like baby boy Russo, baby girl Russo. Like they were not like solidified. Like I wasn't sure. And like a couple days went by and I was like, when do I have until like to get their name out? And so like Bradley, I always say like he picked his name because I was like, wait, what was the last name I kind of liked? Like I was so overwhelmed. I thought I had so much more time. Like you think about it, like today is the end of February. Like, well, actually tomorrow is because it's a leap year. But, you know, like from all the time since his birthday, which obviously I wasn't even taping then. So like from the time of his birthday all the way till March 3rd, which his birthday is at the very end of December, that I hear like that amount of time was, you know, he was still supposed to be in my stomach and he wasn't. And so, you know, like I just wasn't sure like what his name was going to be. And, you know, I just say you picked your name because you came when you came. And, you know, it was like the last name that like was on the list, which I didn't even have with me. It was at home, like in my little name book. And I was like, just like, I think this was it. I couldn't remember. So yeah, that's how he got his name. Karina, she was interesting. So I really wanted to name her Olivia or Isabella. And those were like my top names. But it turned out to be my grandpa had an affair with a woman named Isabel. And I adored my grandma. And so there was no way I was going to have this like girl with, you know, her great granddaughter, her very first great granddaughter, have this name that was synonymous with somebody who had, an affair with her husband. And so I was like, okay, that's scrapped. And I really wanted to have this, which again, I could have went with the L, like, but I was like, really wanted this, like, I couldn't like write Olivia cute enough. And you know, like I liked having the K. Another name, I liked Katerina, but like, we worried about like being teased and stuff like that. So there were a few different names like I considered, and really liked, and like those evolved like from the time, you know, like if any of my other kids would have been girls, there were totally different names. But yeah, there were a few. So but Chris really liked Karina. And it kind of went with like, we have like a lot of Nina, Tina, Gina in the family. And so I was like, well, it kind of goes with like that theme. And it gave her like this sense of connection to these other people in the family. And I thought that was like super cool. So anyway, so she ended up getting her name a couple days after she was born. Dylan, I knew, like, I straight up knew. I'm like, nope, his name is Dylan. Like that's it. Like, I don't even care who says what. And then Tyler, again, I went back and forth. Like, I really liked the name Aiden. And one thing I didn't like about Tyler was like the double R, like Tyler Russo. Like that irritated me. But then by then there were name choices were so minimal because I like had connected, like they all are gonna have Y's in their name. And so I was like, like I really needed this thing to connect them all together, to bond them as if they wouldn't be bonded by anything else but these Y's in their name. So yeah, so anyways, he ended up getting his name shortly after he was born. It was kind of like narrowed down to a couple, and then I'm like, just fine, Tyler, it's gonna be Tyler. But it's interesting because like, you know, when it comes to names, like a lot of the names that I chose, like it was just like, or said no to, were like influenced by what other people thought, or, you know, like just things like what, you know, even my significant other like wanted and things like that. Like it wasn't just what I wanted, but obviously they just weren't my kids either. You know, they were a part of a family, a part of, you know, like a husband and wife, children, you know, like, so it wasn't just like a a solo decision anyways. And so like I deferred a lot of like that power. Like I originally was going to name my daughter Nadia after my grandma, but then my brother had asked me, please don't, I really want to name my daughter Nadia. And I remember my grandma like was pissed. Like she was like, you always said you would. And then I even considered naming her after my grandma's sister, which was Lydia. And, you know, I ended up not doing that obviously, but like, yeah, like my grandma was so upset with me, like you said, and I was like, but Danny asked. And so, you know, I felt like obligated to people please and do what he wanted because I wanted to stay in his graces. And, you know, another name that I really liked at the time, which I'm actually really glad I didn't name because it's just super, super long, was Anastasia. And it's just too long for like, you know, it's just long. Like, like even Karina is long. Like it has Karina, like 3 syllables, you know, Anastasia. Like it's just, they're long names. Maybe, I mean, it's not that much longer, but it is like written out long. And so, but my cousin Nicholas at that time, we were super close. He was like, please don't, like, I want this name. And then again, he didn't even end up naming his kid that anyways, but that's okay. Like whatever, it doesn't matter, but I was fine with it anyways. So, like I dodged a bullet on that one anyways. But it's really difficult for me to make this decision that's like a kind of a permanent. I mean, I guess it's never really permanent. You can go and change your name. Like my cousin, she was born Jennifer Michelle Harry, and then she was Tiffany Alexandria Harry, I think. Then she was like Tiffany Alexandria Farrell. Then she was Alexandria Tiffany Pascal. Like she's had 50 different names. Like, so like, you know, I have this, there is this part of me that understands that like life isn't just linear. Like you can have multiple different names and change them. I don't even know what her name is now, to be honest. It could be anything. So could mine, so can anybody's. But I have this like trouble like figuring out how to choose a name because it has this like permanency. And it's like, for me, it's like, this is an interesting time because it's this extension of me, but it isn't me because it's like, yes, some of these are my stories, but some of them are other people's stories too. It's just my little minor role in these stories or how they affected me. So it's not like it's just all about me. No, I mean, it is like my perspective of these situations, right? Like, but it isn't just like, oh, you know, an ode to me or something like that. And these things aren't about me. Like, I'm not sharing this so that you know about me. Like, I'm sharing this so that like you have the opportunity to feel like a connection and be like, wow, like if this worked for her, maybe this can work for me, or, you know, like, why not try this? Like, so that's why. Or even just to give you like some comic relief and be like, I thought my life was bad, then I listened to hers and actually my life is pretty good. You know, or vice versa. Like, you know, like I have a lot of challenges. Even this woman over here who thinks she's got a lot of challenges, like this is nothing, but I'm still out here, you know, resiliently fighting. And so, you know, whatever it is, however it impacts you or influences you, that's great. That's totally up for your interpretation. But I think that that's why I have this, like, this sense of like pride and this sense of like, I really want to get it right. Cause it's like, I don't want to go back to this decision again. Like, and it is semi-permanent, right? Like, I can change it, you know, it just would be a lot of work and things like that. That's just not necessary. Like the goal isn't the name, right? Like, it's not like that's what everything is about, but I feel like really good about this name. Like I can see it on a book. I can see it like on a thumbnail. I can see it. Like I can see it. I can feel it. And I'm like, oh, this is it. Like I am so close. Like all those moments that I decided to write and not knowing why, and all those moments since that I've decided to like film, like it's all making sense. And then I started thinking about what happened was I started thinking about my Survivor and my Big Brother interviews. And I started thinking about one of the Post-its on my mirror. And one of the Post-its on my mirror is where your focus goes, energy flows. And so I've been writing since, I think it's 2018. I'm not sure. I have to go back and look. But I've been writing, I know it was pre-pandemic, and so I'm going to say 2018. And I know I was writing when my auntie was sick. And so, this is my guess. It could be a little bit longer even, but I never had this name. But I also didn't put this energy into it. Like I didn't have an urgency. I wasn't like, oh, I'm at the finality. I'm ready to like go to a publisher. I'm editing, I'm rereading. Like I just haven't got to that stage yet. Like I'm just in this, like I'm still writing mode, and it's going to come together at some point in time, right? So I end up sitting there and I'm thinking like, okay, I'm going to start right. Like I got like, in my phone, I used the little notes app and I just put names. And then it was like, I can imagine, it was similar to like when I had the little binder paper and like, oh, these are some of the names that I like for my kids, right? Like, so it was like, yeah, that one's good. That one's good. And so basically where I started with was I started like putting words that describe me, words that describe what I'm doing, words, like just words. I'd hear maybe a word or a phrase in a song or on an audiobook or, in something, in around the world, right? Just being out in life. And I would then immediately stop and then put them into my names app. And then sometimes like it would get me flowing. And then I would start thinking like, okay. And I would be like looking up the synonyms, looking up antonyms, like, okay, like really kind of like playing with it, looking up the definition of it. Cause my uncle had taught me there were so many words that are in the US, whatever the dictionary, that I thought meant one thing, but in actuality, there's either multiple meanings or it means something very different. And it was just kind of mind-boggling how my brain had just connected like this meaning to certain words that wasn't even accurate. And so I started doing that, and then more words would pop up, and I would put it away, and I kind of didn't do anything with it. And then if there was something I really liked, like a phrase or a couple words put together, I was like, oh, I like that. I'd rush on to like GoDaddy and I'd see like, is this website available? Because like a lot of things, my name is already taken. So, I think about like, who are some of those greats out there, like Oprah Winfrey and Mel Robbins and Tony Robbins and, Ray Dalio. Like there's so many greats out there, and most of them, it's like their name, right? And then I also go into this thing because it's like, I'm a Russo and I've been a Russo, for the majority of my life now, but it isn't necessarily my name. Like it is now, like I've taken it on. Like I've said, I like the last name. I have no intentions of, getting rid of it or anything like that, even though I'm not really sure where my marriage stands, but, like I like the name, I like it. And, but a lot of it is taken, like it's gone. Like I snoozed, I lose, I missed that chance. And so again, then I started thinking like, this isn't about me. Like, and it's a long name and, it is rememberable, right? Like, but it's, like Mel Robbins, that's 2 syllables, Tony Robbins, it's 2, Robbins, okay, 3 syllables, 3 for both, like, and it's like, I don't know, like, I just get caught up in like silly things like how long is something, and I think it's, again, this quest to be like in this Goldilocks thing, like my name was super long and unique, and then Chris's was super basic and normal, and just kind of wanted to find something in the, in this middle range part. And, so then I started thinking like, and then I put it into like GoDaddy and see, and I'd be like, shoot. Okay. That name is gone. That website's taken. Okay. This is already gone. Like, and I hit the drawing board again. I'd like try variations. I'd try like, adding in a number versus the number, like versus the word to. And I was like, I just don't like the flow of that, and I'd keep looking and I'd put it away, but I'd still leave those like in the names app and put under it, like, here's some things like, it was first like just single words, and then it was like kind of phrases together. And I started then thinking like, I was sitting here, I was thinking about what was on my mirror, and I was like, oh, it's pretty good that now I'm actually putting energy into finding this name, right? Like creating this name, birthing this name for where there is no name and it's only because I finally was putting energy there. And even when I wasn't thinking about it, it was running in the back of my mind. Like my mind was open to find like what was out there. I would see a quote or see something and I was like, oh, I like that word, or oh, I like that. I would see something and it was just unconsciously my brain was like primed to just find these things. And so then I started thinking about my interview just naturally. It wasn't like I was thinking about the name and then I thought of this. And then I happened to just close both of them with this little saying. And it came out of nowhere. It just came from like when I was, finishing up. It just, you're just kind of like, blah, you're just, and I talk a lot. And so it's just like, blah, 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 like me just talking and trying to get it in 3 minutes, and, trying to summarize my whole life or tell a story or whatever it was. But I finished both of them the same way. And then I started thinking about that and I was like, wait a minute, like I like that. That kind of just flew off the tongue. Like I like that. That like works for me. And I went on to GoDaddy and I'm like, okay, that's taken. But what about this? Like, what if I add one more word to it? And it was available. And I was like, okay, what if I add a different word to it? And I was like, that's available. And I was like, what if I had a different word? And that was available. And I was like, stop it. Like, oh my gosh, like this is happening. And then I started like looking up, like, what does this really mean? And I was like, oh, yes, 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 yes. Like, this definition is exactly everything I've been trying to say for all these years. Everything I've tried to teach my kids, everything I've tried to preach to myself, and taken a lot of practice and time to get there, and courage, right? Like, you can hear what people say and be like, oh, everything happens for a reason. And you're like, cool, great. I'm sitting here beat up, broken, destroyed, hurt, sad. And you're telling me there's a reason for this? Like, okay, cool. You have that thought, lady, but it takes a lot of courage to actually believe that and, use that to empower you. And again, it takes a lot of courage to say like, it's going to be small choices. Like today, I'm not going to have thirds. I'm only going to have second. And like to know that that's going to make a difference. It's not going to make a difference tomorrow per se. Maybe, it could be. I don't know how big your thirds are, but like when, for a serving of a meal or something, like, but just making small changes. Like today, I'm going to take a 5-minute walk. Like those small changes make it over time, make a huge difference. And you have to have the courage to believe it. And for me, as a person who does well with like examples or seeing somebody else's story and journey from like beginning to end, because I'm like, okay, yeah, right. Like there's parts of me that like, it seems so like, like I was almost like skeptical, like, really, can it be this easy? Like, is this possible? Like I wanted to believe, I wanted to have the faith that like these things would work, but I just didn't know until they started working. And I was like, wait a minute. So if this is true, then this must be true. And if this must be true, then this one must be true. And just starting small things. Like I said, I started with one Post-it note hanging on my mirror. And it was just, mine wasn't like an affirmation. Like I didn't want to, like, it just felt so weird for me personally. If it works for you, please continue to do that process. But I was not the type of person to be like, you're beautiful, I love you, like, you've got great hair, or whatever these things. Like, that is not my personal style at all. Like, mine is more, I need inspiration. I need to be inspired. I need to be like challenged mentally and then play with this idea and see, is this true? Like, could this be right? And when I hear something and it connects like in that level, I would get a Post-it and like I'd hang it on there. So like this concept, it's a Finnish concept, and I heard about it and for the first time. I had never ever heard of this, and it was called sisu. And it was this like, there's not really a translation into English, but it's like an extreme grittiness. Like it's a part of your DNA. And again, like I was saying, for the majority of my life, I would have described myself with a ton of sisu. Like I embodied sisu. I think I still embody it very much so, but I am like releasing some of that, the chip on my shoulder, almost like the reason and the drive of it. Speaking of drive though, I must tell you, I don't know how many days it's been now, but my driving has done a full 180, like full 180. I feel so at peace when I'm driving now. It is not about where is my exit. And that's what I think it was. It was just so many times being controlled, being trapped, being stuck, being like paying for. I had this idea in my head. I was always paying for somebody else's choices and mistakes. So like what I mean in that, and the concept is like, if you want to be in the fast lane going 50 and I being in the fast lane want to go 75, like I am paying for your choice. I am now stuck back here, doing this at your mercy until either you move over or I find a way to move around you. And, I think it would frustrate me. I think that there was that part of me that it brought up those times where I was molested, or those times that I was sexually assaulted, like those situations, or even small ones where I allowed my power to be, squashed and gave it to somebody else, for many different reasons. And so like coming to that realization with you guys, oh my God, has been like, it probably will save my life. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, like at least with the driving, it's a full different experience. And I'm not saying that there's probably not going to be a day I'm in a rush or in a hurry or stressed out or whatever, and it's gonna, have that thing. It's a total different vibe. I still prefer the fast lane because I'm not as trapped physically, right? I have an exit, I have some shoulder usually on the left. Right now there's some construction on the road I drive frequently, so there isn't any, but it's where I tend to feel the safest. I don't really like being in the middle lanes. Rarely am I ever in the middle lanes. It's either the fast lane or the slowest lane. But anyways, like I just say, like, again, having these small breakthroughs is so incredible, for the fact that I didn't know the power this was having on me. I didn't realize the connection I had between, somebody being in front of me in a car and all these like terrible, traumatic, tragic situations I've had to endure, right? And so like releasing that and realizing these are two totally different things, like, was huge. Like if I could go and say, thank you, Mr. Tesla, because you really inspired this growth and journey, I would go and shake that person's hand and just say, thank you so much. Like, you have no idea how your driving irritated me enough to get to the point where I could talk about it and vent about it, and then realize that it wasn't even about you, buddy. Like it was about some crazy stuff I had going inside. So, if you find yourself reacting in a certain way to certain people or certain circumstances, again, I'm not a therapist. And if you have one, please consider, speaking with them, or if you would be willing, consider going to a therapist or use one of the many, many resources available online. But I mean, really take a look and have some, like accountability for like, what is really going on here? Is it just what seems to be obvious, which is just the car, the driver there, whatever, or is there something more deeper in there that's kind of going on for you? And then kind of have a conversation with yourself, which I know, again, that sounds so cuckoo crazy, but figure out like, what is this bringing up for you? Like, why is this an issue? I'm so grateful. I'm so stinking grateful for having had that opportunity. Like my drives to Fremont now are like, I didn't even realize I was under stress, even though I was listening to music and I was listening to audiobooks and things that, put me in a good and calm mood. I was in this elevated, stressed, just being, and I didn't even realize it. Again, it was such a default right hand setting that it just was natural. It felt normal. This is what driving is. And now I'm like using my left hand. I'm like, oh wait, driving isn't like this all the time. Like it doesn't have to be. And then I started thinking, I was like, well, no wonder why my kids don't want to drive. Like, like I didn't make it a fun experience for them, like, so yeah, I say all that to say, so I feel like there is still Sisu within me, but I definitely feel as if those edges are just, getting sand down and rounded off a little bit. Like I feel a lot more, again, I'm going to use this word, just gentle. And that gentleness comes from being gentle to myself as well. I think that that is the origination of it. And then I feel like it's then out, goes to the next layer. And it's so nice because like even today, like I had said something to my kid, to two of my sons, and they didn't like what I said. And I thought about it for a second, and I went in, I took a minute and I thought about it, and I was like, where was this coming from that you said this in the first place? And then, I went in there and, they had both slept in late, or one had woken up and then went back to sleep, went to school and then went back to sleep. And I was like, and I was coming in hot. I was like doing all these things. I'm excited about what I'm sharing. And here I have, 4 students in the house. I'm not going to count Chris because I drive him absolutely batty with anything I say. He will do the absolute opposite. And I have learned like, just zip and don't say anything. Like nothing I can say is productive. And then it challenges, he then says is like, that's not true. Those things are, yeah, that doesn't happen. Like, and then the negativity makes me very defensive of my, like, these are my core beliefs. These are like my foundation. And now you're, saying these things aren't true. And like, I feel very defensive. I feel very attacked. Like, so like, I've just learned it's better to not, like, he doesn't receive it well from me. So I should not be just forcing my opinions and thoughts upon him. So I try to be very like cognizant and just not do that as much as I can. But anyways, I had recently heard in this thing, like the average person, and this, like, again, I'm going to go back to this because we talk about this a lot on here, because it's part of like the reminder of A, the fragility of life, and B, we just don't simply know what's going to happen later. And so when we just keep pushing things off to one day, some days, that sometimes in some lives that doesn't come true. I have been by enough people at the end of their life, and they have been very honest about the amount of regrets that they had and their advice to me. And these are people I genuinely cared so much about and still care so much about, that they had no reason to lie to me. There was no reason to just say these things. Like, I believe what they were saying. I believe the feeling. And then even listening, like being in environments like a care home and situation where somebody was there and then they weren't. Your neighbor across the way was there and then they weren't. But then I'm a social person. So, right. So we go into the activity hall and, you see like we're listening to a musician or there's some kind of hot cocoa event or something like that. And then people want to share their stories, right? A lot of times these people are left alone. They're abandoned, whether it be their kids don't live here, whether it be they don't even have kids, whether they don't have family, or there's been falling outs, or I don't know their full story. But what I did know and observe was how many people were there alone. Just absolutely alone and just begging for attention. They would, push the call button. The nurse would get annoyed. I'm not answering. I'd be like, panicking at first. I was like, there's, like 5 call buttons on over here. Nobody's coming. It's been dinging for over an hour. And she was just like, I'm busy. They ding all the time. They just want somebody to talk to. But I was like, my gosh, these people are at the end of their life or, experiencing something so traumatic that has put them into this situation, and they just want to be loved and seen and heard. Like, what is so wrong with that? But I get, as a nurse, when you have, 20 patients that you're tending to and have to give medications and, clean their bedding and do all the other, basic stuff, that like sitting and having a conversation with them isn't, necessarily high on your totem pole, or isn't even possible. And I get that you probably have to get really desensitized because it's really sad, right? Like, you have a patient, you adore them, and then suddenly they're gone the next day. And so, again, chatting with them and the things that they would remind me too, the same things. And everybody is saying the same things at the end of the life. So I don't think they're all just lying to me, So I take that as very powerful knowledge and wisdom that I try to remind myself. And so I speak about it, not because I'm morbid or like talking about death, but I just know that that's going to happen. And the sooner I accept that that's going to happen to me and my loved ones, the sooner I'm able to say, okay, well, now what? Like, okay, that's fine. But now, what should I do in the middle times? Do I listen to them, or do I just do the same thing that they did and then end up having a bunch of regrets? So I could just tell my kids, do these things, like live your life, go out, take the risk, like all those things. Do I just live my life the same way and tell them the same thing? Like, and who knows, I can do everything I do and take the risks and still be saying the same things at the end of the day. I don't know, but I'm not willing to take that chance. And so, again, like I say, I have read this, this notion, I don't know what it is. And they were talking about how the average lifespan is, let's say 80 years old, and my math is going to be off or whatever. But they were saying, the average person lives. Now this one hit me. So listen up. The average person lives 40,000 days. 40,000 days. And at first you're like, okay, that's a good number. But you think about it in the context of how important each day then becomes, right? So if today is one of my 40,000 days and I've already lived, I don't know how many days, right? I can probably, do the calculations or have, one of these AI things do it for me, but I've lived a lot of days, and, it just gives you this thing, like, I just don't want to waste or squander a day. And I'm the definer of that. Like, if I need to lay in bed all day and you may come in and say that's a waste, like you're wasting your life away, this is my life to live, right? And so I get this, I hear something like this, and then I go in and I see my kids have slept. It's, like 11 o'clock and they're waking up, and I'm thinking like I get like this, almost like not an anxiety, but just this urgency, like, and mind you, one of them I've already seen die, and another one has nearly died, in front of me. Like, so it's like, you're already on borrowed time. Like, like this is your second chance at life. Like, let's go, And so I get it. They aren't me. They're not on my journey. And I'm not saying at their age, I wasn't where they are, but like, I have this knowledge, I have this information, and I just want to like tell them and have it be like, oh mom, I get it. Like where like people will say in the gym and people will say other places, like, do you know, like tonight, like I had these ladies, they came up and they're like, I want you to know, like, we love when you dance in the front. Like, we love when you do this. Like, you have so much energy. Like, when I'm huffing and puffing, I sit there and I look at you and you're flinging your hair around and you're this alter ego up there. And you're having a great time, and it encourages me more. Other ones are like, I've watched your transformation over these last couple years, and you're inspiring me. Like, I'm going home, like one lady is like integrating intermittent fasting and everything. I'm not telling her, I'm just saying these are the things that worked for me. This is what I did. These were my non-negotiables each day. And she's like, I feel so great. Like I am, so I'm like, I'm so glad it's working for you. We talk about like, what's your eating window? She's like, I do 12 to 8. And so I'm like, that's so good. She's like, I got to hurry up and get home and eat. I'm like, good, like you go do that. And just, like, so it's like other people, like I have this influence, but more it's your kids, right? So you have like, I plant the seeds, but I want to see everything bloom now. Like, I'm not really patient with them, and they do pay off. Like in particular with Dylan, as all of his recent things that have happened, like that a lot of them are a direct result of his work. I will never, ever, ever take that from him. But they were those long conversations, those things that we talked about, those seeds planted that have helped him, as he has said, to help teach him to take things to that next level. And if you really want something, to work for it, and working in the shadows, like, it's not about what you're told to do. It's what you do when nobody's watching. And just all those little lessons. And I'm like, okay, great. So then I went in, like, I was already running and I was writing, and I was like kind of writing about a topic that like was something that happened a very long time ago, but it just reflecting on it. And again, it was natural. I didn't like think, oh, I'm going to think about this particular thing, which I can probably get into if I have enough time here today. I wasn't thinking like, oh, this about this at all. Like it just came up in the writing like process. And it was like, oh, okay, here we go. Here's another thing that needs some healing. Here's another piece of me that, it just had this story running in the background. So I'm thinking about this situation that gave me a lot of angst, that gave me a lot of worry. And so I go in, and of course, like that's the ideal. Like, I think, if they're saying average, we want to live more than 40,000 days, but what if we don't? And so, like, and maybe they needed the sleep. And so they were both offended by what I said. And I thought about it for a minute, and I went in and I was like, listen, it is not my job. Like, this is your life. This one over here, mine, this one over there, yours. And, if you tell me and you ask me to help support you, to keep you on the goals and the things that you say you want to achieve, I am here to do that. I will be your coach. I will be your mentor. I will do all those things. But if you don't want my help, or if you don't want my assistance or my feedback, I can be that too. I can just be your mom, So I went in individually and like apologized to them both. I'm like, it's your life, and it's on the table. Like, if you want it at any time, like if you want the help in 10 years from now, like, it is still here. It's never going to go away. Like, especially you, I would drop everything to make sure that you had that kind of support from me. Or somebody else. I'd help you to find it if you don't want it from your mom. Like, I get it. There's certain people you're just like, I just don't want to hear it from you. Like, I get it from somebody else. Like, you could say the same thing better than somebody else, but that somebody else is like, not related or, anything. And they're like, oh, all of a sudden it's godly. It's perfect. It connects, and that's okay. I don't care who or how you get it. Just get it. Right. But because they're my babies, I don't want them to struggle. Right. Again, it's still this overprotective mom that just wants the best for her kids. And sometimes that execution, I fail, right? I use that right hand. I come in hot. I'm all filled with sisu, and I'm not gentle, and, I can be, but some situations I'm not. A lot of them with the kids, I default into this, that mom role, that sisu, and I'm getting a lot better. But there are times, right, again, when it's this kind of this perfect storm of situations where it was like, I'm already feeling things, and, then there this and this and this, and it just adds up, and I go right to that right hand. But I then rectify it by using the left hand, and by going and apologizing and having accountability and saying, hey, look, I'm sorry. Like, you didn't deserve to hear that. Like, it is true. It is your life. Like, it's not mine to judge. And I'm just going to let you be. If you want my help, I'm here. If you don't, I will just zip it. It's okay. It's fine. It's taken me this long, like, to get to where I am. And so if they get there anytime before that, they're better than me. And it maybe they come after me. Like, doesn't matter. Like, but it's just, I think that there's that part of me that realizes it took me so long, and now, like, I have this ability, and I'm sure this is how my grandma felt, and my aunties felt, and my uncle felt, and like, anybody who's been around me that knew better than me, I feel like they probably felt like this. And then they would tell me, and I'm like, yeah, you just better. And so there comes a time when it's like, when are you ready to receive it? That's a long accumulation of things too. And everybody is unique, and everybody is on their own different journey, and they're going to receive things and hear things differently each time. Like I was talking about, like, some of the books that I've read, I just have recently checked out again, because I'm like, I feel like I will hear and learn something different now, because I am so much different now. I'm still the same in a lot of ways. Like I said, in this conversation, I could tell you how I've changed with my driving, but I can tell you how I can pop right back into using my right hand in certain circumstances. But I'm learning, and I'm repairing fast, and it's done. Like, it's, it is much better. I'm not carrying it. I'm not feeling guilty. I'm not going to have trouble sleeping tonight. I gave them a platform to talk. I feel good about what I did, like, about coming full circle and explaining to them, like, hey, I'm so sorry. Like, you're right. So, what I was thinking about was, I was thinking about how, this journey, like, for me, really began with just my first steps were really about just becoming, like, aware and becoming conscious. Like, I remember I would spend a lot of my time, and I think that this was, like, one of the reasons why I felt so inclined to go in and coming in hot, like, again, and say it because there were so many days and I was reflecting on this. So it just was a matter of timing. And it was like, I think in a way, I really wanted to like go back to my self, 15, 20 years ago and say, like, go in 15 years ago and say, my gosh, do this with your time, right? Like go work out. Like, as I remember so many times too, like as much as I worked hard, like there were days like I would come home after dropping them all off at school or doing these certain things, and then I would go lay in bed because I was just so overwhelmed by life. Like, and there were some days I would just lay in bed and watch like talk shows or, like gossip shows or reality TV with like people fighting and stuff like that all the time. And it was like this escape. And I felt like, okay, their lives are crazier than mine, or they're better than mine. And it validated that I wasn't worthy of having great things or great experiences. And, so I had all these like things like going in my mind thinking about that. And then I was also thinking about how I like made this decision to become conscious and about what I was consuming. And I didn't mean it in like what I was consuming way, like eating, but like as far as like the feedback I was getting from this world, like I started becoming very aware of like the shows I was watching, and I stopped watching the news. Before I'd watch the news all the time, and like everything was like doom and gloom, and I like, even though I was a positive person, it was taking on this like this angst and this worry. And then it was like almost an addiction. I had to watch more news. I had to watch more news. And then I would switch it to like the all day news. And it was just, it wasn't, I kept thinking like, they need to have a good news channel. Like, where's the good news channel? And obviously there wasn't one. And I just felt like I was just consuming things like really negative, even like TV shows or things like that were like of intense subject matters or things like I just didn't feel comfortable seeing. I just started to slowly like phase them out and see like, hey, how do I feel now that I'm not consuming this kind of, information, this kind of knowledge? And I started to feel lighter. I started to feel like easier. I started to feel like I had more time. I didn't feel so weighed down by these external things that I had I really don't have control over a lot besides myself, right? But I really have no control over, what's going on in different countries and what's going on even on the other side of the country, and it just would freak me out in some ways. So kind of phasing those out and being conscious of what I consume was like super helpful. And then I started thinking about my journey, about how, how little self-love I was giving to myself, and that, those little actions of self-care that seemed really odd and unfamiliar for me at first were this catalyst to this explosion of self-love that came when I just built up this arsenal of self-care tasks between, going out to a restaurant by myself, even thinking that I was worthy of having a meal, just, buying myself something. These are basic things, taking a drive to the beach and hanging out there all day. Like so many different things that I was concerned about and neglected myself. It was like I was punishing myself. Like I didn't deserve these things either. Like I only deserved very, very minimal things, very basic things. And then I started thinking about how, even so, like, have you guys ever had this experience where, I remember there were times, especially on holidays, but this could be any given casual dinner with the six of us, where I would, do the grocery shopping, do all the food preparation and cooking, make sure everybody else was served, make sure everything was fine. And by the time I would sit down, there was like scraps left for me or nothing left for me. And I remember like feeling like frustrations, and I remember feeling like sad. I felt like it was like proof of my unworthiness. It was that, proof that, see, nobody cares. And I would feel the resentment start flowing in and flowing up, and I just wanted somebody to save me, and literally at this point I just wanted somebody to save me some food. Like, I care so much about everybody else. Like, if they cared, they would have at least made me a plate. And as I look around, and people took some gluttonous amounts without like thinking. They just took what they took, and they weren't thinking like, oh wait, maybe, is there enough for everybody else? They were just doing their thing. And then obviously they couldn't eat it all. And so their food that I would then put into the trash can or the compost or the disposal was like a reminder of the, unworthiness and how uncared for I was. And I started thinking about that. Like, I really was a person that really wanted to service other people. I really wanted to make sure everybody else was happy and content. And, I wanted my guests to be happy. I wanted my family to be happy. But I realize now I was like the small martyr. I was willing to sacrifice anything that even resembled happiness for myself in order for everybody else to achieve that. And it made me start thinking about how hard would it have been if I would have just served myself first? Like, why didn't I do that? Just curiously. I'm not like, beating myself up about it. And, I didn't want to seem like I was rude or impolite, and I didn't want to seem selfish or greedy, and I wanted to make sure everybody else had their things. Like, I would be fine if I couldn't eat. I would find something else. And, I had this whole story, and I was thinking, like, if anybody would get mad, like, or judge me because I am serving myself some food that I have, cooked all day and prepared and paid for, all these things, if they have judgment on me for taking care of myself too, then that's their work. Like, that isn't my work. Like, they must have problems inside of them that they need to tend to and work on, and that's their job to do that. Like, me taking care of myself, I'm not saying I take the whole meal or anything like that, like, but me taking some, that's okay. Like, that's a reasonable thing to do. That is not impolite or rude or anything like that, despite what someone else may think. Like, I think it is more loving than it seems. And so it made me like start thinking about that whole, put your face mask on first. And then I thought about how, when I was a little girl and I would fly across country a lot by myself. We didn't pick the most expensive flight, so I never had a direct flight. I would often stop 1-2 times, like often in Ohio, sometimes in Philadelphia, like Pittsburgh, like it was multiple stops, sometimes in Texas. And then it was, 2, 3, 4 stops, right? Before I would get to Maryland. And, I navigated that all by myself, but I remember every takeoff was a reminder I was alone, right? So you're sitting there, you're here, you're listening. I'm young, like I started flying cross country, younger than 10 years old. And I would just, I would listen very carefully. I would take it very serious. I had the little pamphlet out, like looking where the exits were and looking over my shoulder. And, when they would talk about put on the mask, your mask first, and then help your child or whatever, it was just this reminder that I was alone. It was a reminder that I wasn't with, a family member or a parent or a friend or anything, that I was just this person alone. And it was up to me to figure out how to put my own face mask on, that there wasn't anybody there to help me. And so I was thinking about that, and that made me feel sad. Like, I remember feeling sad, and I remember again having the eyes, the way like the flight attendant would look at me, or the way the other people, the passengers would look at me confused. Like, it just like when I would go to the doctor's alone and walk there, like, or when I was sick at school and I could go home, but nobody was going to pick me up. So the buses didn't run at that time. So it was my responsibility to walk all the way home. And, I remember the looks on the people's faces when they realized I was alone, you know, it kind of stuck with me. Like, it was sad, you know, like I didn't necessarily feel like sorry for myself ish, you know, like I say, but I just felt so different. And I felt like I really was just missing out on some of that. But it, you know, there was nothing that could change that or control that. It just was my life, right? And but I will never forget the sympathetic eyes that I got. And it was like, it's not like I want to help, but it just was like, I feel really sorry for you. And I didn't like that. That made me feel uncomfortable in some ways. You know, I didn't want sorrow. I wanted help. I wanted support. I wanted love. So, I say all that to say, I remember then taking a flight when I was pregnant with Dylan, with Bradley and Karina, my grandma, and flew to Texas, and I was pretty pregnant. It was like, I think August, September, and I was doing early December, the beginning of December. So it was pretty out there. And I remember them saying this again now, and now you're in a different life, you're in a different phase of life. And I'm sitting there and I'm listening, you know, because now I'm in a different kind of intent, because it's like, I have to be the protector. I am responsible for these the kids, and even my grandma. She's not like, oh, she's got this kid or anything. First off, me and the two kids are in one row. She's behind us. And listen, she needs my help just as much as they do. Like, she almost was more of a challenge at losing in the airport than the two little kids were. But anyways, like, she was always a crack up. Like, she's just so funny. But anyways, so I say that to say, like, I remember like rolling my eyes. Like, there is no way in life, there is no possibility where all of a sudden we're in need of oxygen, and I'm gonna just sit here and let my kids be deprived of oxygen as I put my mask on. Not gonna happen. Like, no way. Rolled my eyes. Like, you can tell me what you think is gonna happen, and I'll show you what's gonna happen if this happens. Like, it ain't that. And then it started making me think, well, who do I pick first? And I positioned myself in the middle seat. So if there was a disaster, I could, both of them are within arm's reach, and I can, get their masks on and do all the things. Then I start thinking, like, well, whose mask do I put on first? And now I start panicking, because it's like, I love them the same. Like, there is not one I want more deprived than the other. And one I've already seen die, and all the, like, I have all these, like, this angst kind of going on about this hypothetical thing that hopefully never ever happens, right? But I'm genuinely panicking. And I was like, okay, then I resolved to, like, whoever's mask pops out first of the kids, they're getting it first, and then the other one, and then, hopefully there's enough time for me to get mine on. Then I got to check on grandma too. Don't forget. So I'll get, whoever pops out first, grandma, then me. Like, that's the totem pole here. So I resolved that this is the plan. Thankfully, never needed to, test it out. But then it made me start thinking. And again, this went back to, like, why I started becoming very conscious about what I consumed, as far as, like, reading, news, all these things like that. There was this story. I lived across the street from a bridge for most of my life. And it was a pretty popular Bay Area bridge, not like Golden Gate Bridge, popular, but it was, one of the few, Bay Area bridges. And, I heard some crazy stories on that bridge. So I'm like, I have a terrible fear of bridges. Especially like ones I don't know. Like, I'm okay with this particular bridge. I don't like the high part, the high and the down. I don't like it. I'm okay on the Golden Gate Bridge. I'm okay on the Bay Bridge. Like, I have found, like, where I like to be if I'm in a middle lane. In that situation, I like to be in a middle lane. So there's, like, plenty of room. Like, so I have my own, like, psychological thing. There's a bridge that takes you to, like, San Rafael. And for many years, I would go on it and just hate it, like, knuckled, sweating. Like, as of recently, I haven't been going on it. Like, my kids have games over there. I'm like, I'm just so sorry. I am not okay to go on this bridge right now. And so I'm so sorry. That means I'm going to miss your game. But I get so angst on this bridge that I can't handle it. And I used to have all these reoccurring dreams as a kid of flying off a bridge. And so every time I'm on a bridge, like, I have this PTSD of these dreams I used to have that aren't real, right? But, like, they feel so real. Like, I can go back to it right now. And like a couple of those, like that bridge in particular, it's like the minute I'm on it, and then if I'm towards the end of it, like I'm cool, like it gets down low and I'm cool, like I'm fine. But there's just something about it that makes me so sick to my stomach and nervous, and I just am like, I get over it within a few minutes of getting off of the bridge, but it just is like my whole drive to the bridge, is like stress filled and anxiety filled. So again, I probably really need to work on that because I want to travel. And, one part of life is like, you go over bridges and transitions. And I know they're really scary and hard, but, again, I got to get to that, but there's a lot of things that are going on. So, but anyways, I'll get to this quick story. So there was a story, again, now I probably shouldn't even tell you because I'm just perpetuating these things. There were many stories about many different freak weird accidents that happened on this bridge that I lived across the street from. And one of them was this like family who was driving in a minivan and they flew off. I don't know what happened, if they hit something, tire blew. I don't know don't recall, but they flew off the bridge. And it made me start panicking on the bridges about a new thing I didn't think about, like, especially when I had the kids and you have, 4 kids and, 2 are in boosters, 2 are in car seats. And, I start thinking like, well, who do I go to, like, in this situation? Like, and I would have these like panic attacks, like every bridge now wasn't even just my fears. It was like, how do I save them? Like, how do I get out of my seat? And I remember even buying this like device that cuts the seat belts, it's like in my door still, like right next to my thing, where you can like smash a window. Then I'm like, now the water's flowing in and now I've got 4 kids by myself and I'm trying to swim and pull them out of car seats and all these things. Like, I would have these full panic attacks every bridge thinking about this. And so, I just think that I got in this position of like wanting to be like, it was of a good place. I wanted to protect, I wanted to save, I wanted to help all my kids and things like that. But then like I created this whole like experience based on other people's experiences that like was really anxiety ridden. And thankfully, again, I've never had to endure this thing. But like, I remember at times thinking like, like they would be like, well, who would you say first? And I was like, listen, at this point, we are all just going down together. Like, I can't choose. I can't even think about this. Like, I'm like getting literally sick to my stomach. And so even just talking about it now, I can feel my stomach still getting like angst about it. And so I was writing about it and I had angst. And then, again, they came out and I heard them and I'm like, it's like, so there's a lot of things to work on, but I again, now I'm trying to be cognizant of what I watch. I really don't watch too much for this reason, because I do believe that thing where it says like you are the combination of the 5 people you are around the most. And that could be like physically, but that could be information. Like if the person you're around the most, because you're not out, maybe you're an introvert and that's the person on the news, like what they're telling you, that is still counts. Like what books you're consuming, like these things influence us so heavily. And so I really want to be cognizant of what I consume, and I am doing a really good job of it now. And then even sometimes I get uncomfortable when somebody is like telling me these terrible stories, because it's like, I almost don't want to know. I start to like, worry and have anxiety and things. And again, I'm getting better now. Like that was my right-handed me. It doesn't mean it's not going to happen like in this thing. So I was like, okay, here's another moment for some healing. Like I need to, like I say, go do my wonky tonky work and go back and talk to that version of me that was like, very noble and wanted to protect her family and be of service to everybody else, but also let her know, like, I'm so proud of you, like, for doing all that, but also let her know, like, she is worthy, like, it's okay to help service other people and it's okay to do all those things, but you really need to take care of yourself first. Serve yourself. You're allowed, you're entitled to, you're worthy of a meal that you cooked too. And you shouldn't feel guilty or shameful of that. And that realizing the more that I give to me, the gentler I am to me, the kinder I am to me, the more routines that I implement that are positive, the more I have to give. And the energy in which I'm giving, the energy in which I can service other people is completely different than before. You know, before it was like, I had to, and it was an obligation, and I signed up for this, and they were my kids, and this is my responsibility. This is not my responsibility. This is my dream. This is my passion. This is something I didn't know I ever wanted until I was like, I need this in my life, and I need to be this vehicle of sharing this information. Because even if I just get to one person, if one person is like, I get it, or I see it, or you inspired me, or you motivated me, and if it's even just for 1 minute of one day of your entire life, then that is so worth it for me. Like hearing that, you know, hearing that there's a lady who, and many ladies and gentlemen that are like, you know, I'm inspired by you. Like they were laughing today. They're like, you need to put like, have them hang your before and after pictures in the lobby of the gym here. And, you know, I'm like, it's just so sweet to say, like, so I appreciate it all. So again, I'm here to say we are so freaking close to where I gotta be like, hi, I'm Natasha and I am with da 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 or whatever. Like I have a name. I'm choosing for myself to represent this extension of me, and that is an extension of you, and is something that is going to outlive me. Like this will be a legacy that can be here until the end of books and time. Like, and I think that that's so like amazing that it makes every single struggle and strife like so beautiful. Like it really did. Like everything I chose to sacrifice was really raising me up. And so I just think that like I am so grateful for every day, and I'm so grateful for the mistakes I make and the ability to now learn and go back and heal and, you know, rectify it with my kids and resolve it and not just leave it. And so that they hopefully can learn that, hey, yeah, it's okay. Like sometimes you're going to say or do something that's going to hurt somebody, but you can go back and repair it. It doesn't mean that that's the end of the relationship. It doesn't mean that I need to be quiet and not speak my voice. Like it just means that like, this is a safe place for me to say, hey, that I didn't like that. And I say, hey, I'm sorry. I that wasn't my intention. And you know, you're right. You know, you do you. That is your life. This is mine. And even though you are my kid, so it feels like there's this extension, you are your own human. You are your own person with your own 40,000 days. So choose how you use them. And some days it may be you're laying in bed all day, and some days you fly out of bed and you're like, it's past 1 o'clock before you even get back into bed. Like, it's your life. Do what you want with those 40,000 days. So I say all that to say, thank you so much for tuning in today. If you could just do me one favor, go out there, give somebody a big smile, give them a compliment, and just watch how they glow up. So thank you so much. Bye.